Housing and Economic Development Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call posting of the agenda? And Mayor, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Will do.
Member Zaragoza,
Here.
Member Madrigal,
Here.
Chair McDonald.
Here.
The agenda for this meeting was posted in the City Hall kiosk on Tuesday, March 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor, it's your show.
Thank you so much. And please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's take a moment of silence for all the individuals that are suffering in this nation and around the world with this pandemic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move to item B, public comments on items not on the agenda. And I show that we have one speaker, Mr. Henry Alvarado Sapien.
Mr. Alvarado Sapien is not available at the moment, Chair.
Okay, maybe we'll see if we can come back to him. Item C, there's nothing. Item D1, and I show that we have two speakers on that. The first one will be Barbara Macri Ortiz.
She is not available at the moment, Chair.
Okay, well, let's try Pat Brown.
We do not have Pat Brown on the line.
Well, we're batting 1,000. Okay, then we will go to D1. And I'll invite our new, let's see. I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Our new Community Development Director. And I'm going to allow him to say his name the first time because I don't want to butcher it. I apologize, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. The item before you is a report on the status and the city's update to the 2021 through 2029 housing element, the 6th cycle housing element, including an update on the site inventory schedule, next steps, and provide input regarding a new housing element program conceptually titled the Institutional Land Housing Opportunity Program. Ms. Kathleen Mallory has the staff report and PowerPoint presentation for you tonight. And again, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you at my second committee meeting, I believe. And my last name is pronounced Adamitis. I go by Vito. My first name is Vitautis. So now you know why people call me Vito.
I'm glad you said it because I would have called you Vito and I would have messed it all up. So thank you, sir. And Ms. Mallory, it's up to you.
Thank you.
Chair McDonald, I'm sorry, one moment, Kathleen.
Yes.
The PowerPoint we will not be presenting tonight in accordance with Measure M. It's already been broadcast, so Kathleen's available to answer any questions. And if the public speakers come back in to hear those questions and respond, if that's what you would like her to do.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ms. Golden. I also wanted to just mention a few things that I wanted that were covered in the staff report as well as in the presentation. Just some updates, as we indicated in the staff report regarding the community meeting, which would be held tomorrow night, to allow the public more time to provide input. We are moved the community meeting to March 24th at 6 p.m. The draft housing element will be released tomorrow. So that will be, we wanted to give the public lots of time to give input on that document. We will also be meeting with the House Farm Worker Group as we've been doing every month. That meeting is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So I'll be a part of that meeting along with Emilio as well. And I also wanted to mention that we changed the Planning Commission meeting from the 18th of March to April 1st, and that's no fools. We will actually be having it that day. There's no change to the schedule of this draft housing element being presented to the City Council on April 29th. I also wanted to mention that I have in the meeting here as well. Heather Davis, who has been instrumental in helping with the report writing for the housing element. And she's with Rincon, and she's been assisting with this work effort. I also have Emilio Ramirez, who's been involved in quite on the helping with the housing element and on the institutional program. So that covers the items. I knew there was a question, I believe maybe from Barbara Macri Ortiz regarding the AHOP program. I wanted to mention that consistent with council's direction in October of 2020, we have reformulated the AHOP program. We will be having an AH program, all standing for Affordable Housing Program, but that is only as it relates to our sites inventory and the overlay that we will be placing on specific lower income parcels. And there's reasons why we'll be doing that, basically to preserve the city's right to review and have oversight on the permitting of those lower income parcels. To keep it very high level and not too detailed, I'll leave it at that, and more than happy to answer any questions you have regarding that. But I just wanted to mention that the AHOP program is being reformulated, and I wanted to cover that item.
And
Happy-
thank you. That was my only question, because I wasn't sure about AHOP, but my understanding is being reformulated and consistent with state wording. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I'm sorry, Ashley, did you have a comment?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Chair, Mallory, for the public's sake, and refreshment, how does it SCAG and come out with arena numbers? I noticed that they look at we have the low income, moderate, above moderate, and we're looking at potentially 8,500 more homes in the next cycle. And I noticed that they increase it by, I think, 20 additional homes per moderate and above moderate and lower income. Can you share a little bit more information how SCAG comes out with arena numbers? And this is for the sixth cycle, right?
Yes, Mayor, I'm happy to cover that. I'm going to, again, go very high level on how they come up with the numbers. The state of California identifies an affordable housing. Actually, let me restart. The state of California identifies an overall need for housing within the Southern California region, which we think it's, you think just West Hollywood, Santa Barbara. There's a whole territory made up of about 191 cities that comprise that Southern California territory. And the focus is not just on lower income housing. The state identifies an overall number of housing units that is needed to deal with overcrowding, to address lower income construction. Again, there's a very complicated formula taking into consideration past overcrowding parameters, and then what the state identifies as the need to alleviate that overcrowding and provide housing for lower income communities. This new cycle is a very unique time, because what SCAG did, and Mayor, I appreciate your question. It sounds like you're very aware of some uniqueness that they did, right. Is they went through and looked at what communities hadn't been building affordable housing, and they came up with a formula, a very complicated methodology that all cities and counties were involved in looking at. They considered past historical construction of affordable housing and a number of other factors, and then they reallocated, or not reallocated, then they allocated the housing numbers by city, taking into consideration giving more affordable housing numbers to communities that hadn't been building it historically over the prior 8-year cycle, which is what we're just completing. So again, that's sort of the big picture. Many cities that had been building affordable housing were very happy about this, because the obvious is if you weren't building it, you should be getting more lower income units and numbers. We participated throughout the entire process and had the city's best interest represented. In terms of the new numbers that came out just last week, February 22nd, the final SCAG numbers were adopted. Actually, no, it was early March. It was March 4th. The final numbers were adopted, but what happened is SCAG had, as a result of the housing numbers, 2 communities in the Southern California region appealed the allocation of their numbers. Actually, 50 appealed, only 2 were successful. Pico Rivera and one other community. And what they looked at was the mathematical formula that was used to allocate their numbers. That was evaluated by the SCAG board. And as a result of that, the determination was those communities were correct. And those units were then reallocated throughout the Southern California region. That's the reason we received 20 more units that were spread across the different income categories.
And Mallory, the other question I have before the other council members, the ADUs, are they count towards the affordable housing?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. We received direction from council to count up to 1,000 of our accessory dwelling units
Because I
as
know
lower
that,
income.
I know that the governor's really pushing the ADUs, and so that's going to really help us with the lower income amount that we need here. And
Yes.
Oxnard traditionally has been pretty good with the lower income housing, correct?
Yes, we have. We've been exceptional in building, and we should be proud of that. We've also been exceptional in building our accessory dwelling units. Since 2014, 15, our numbers have just skyrocketed in terms of the number of applications. We've streamlined the approval we have on our planning handout page, a procedure where folks can just pick up that document and basically run their permit right over counter. So we've seen a big increase in ADUs.
Yeah, and the final adoption is going to be in September, correct?
That's correct. We'll bring the draft housing element to the city council on April 29th, and then we'll be bringing the final housing element September-ish. We will meet the October 15th deadline for approval of the final housing element.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will just echo Ms. Mallory's comments. I sat on SCAG prior to Mayor Pro Tem sitting on it last cycle, and I led the arena process in Ventura County during that cycle. And it became very apparent during that process, the only requirement that cities felt they had to comply with, and this was true at the time, was they had to apply numbers to RENA and fill the numbers, but there was no obligation to ever build that product as the end result. And I told a couple of my peers in other LA County cities, I said, this is going to come back and haunt you. You just wait and see. And Oxnard has always been very good at meeting our goals and or trying to meet our goals, and other cities didn't. So it doesn't surprise me that SCAG changed their methodology to fix that little void in the system, which allowed people to assign the numbers but never complete them. So, Councilmember Madrigal, any comments, sir?
Yes, but actually, before I go, I know that there is, I don't know, one of the 3 speakers is actually on the line, so I don't know if you want to do them first.
Sure. Madam Clerk, if we can go back to the speakers and see if we can get them in.
Yes. Caller number 1, who's on hold, please? Are you waiting for public speaker comment? Please unmute, if so, by pressing *6.
Okay, hi. This is, let me just mute this. This is Barbara Macri Ortiz calling. How's everybody? Hope you're all doing well. I don't like this system. It's too confusing, man. But anyhow, what I wanted to talk about is a couple of the things in the program. I think it's a good idea to try to come up with an industrial, what do they call it, the providing housing, I guess, incentive for institutional, that's what it was, institutional. You know, over the years, we have tried to partner with organizations, and it has been a real difficult road. But I think if you cut out a path that is clear and that they can understand, and maybe there'd be some good joint ventures with nonprofit developers and these institutional to start using a lot of the vacant land that we have. Uh, you can put housing above parking lots. You can do shared housing when you're dealing with churches. At certain times they need the parking and then they don't need parking. There's just a lot of potential there. So I think that's definitely an area to explore and do some work with the community and the stakeholders in designing an appropriate program on that. I'm a little concerned about the procedures. I didn't have a big problem with discontinuing the AHOP, but I am concerned just after listening to some of what Kathleen said, because it's unclear what we would have to be, what the path forward would be. Just because you give a higher density, if you make it difficult and time consuming to be able to get your permit, then I think, we'll probably just end up doing SB 35 applications because we can't afford to take the amount of time that these projects have been taking. So that's something to think about there. Again, the local preference, I don't know what your issue is. You can do it. And in fact, I don't think people have been aware, but our existing inclusionary housing ordinance talks about local preference. So we've had basically, at least with respect to inclusionary, we have had local preference since 1999. So, we need to be a little more proactive, and let's start building for our people and try to get our people in the housing.
Your time
And
is up.
any tool that you have to be able to utilize that would be well worth it for you to use it. I think that.
Thank you, Barbara. Madam Clerk, if we can see if we can get Miss Pat Brown back on the line or on the line, as long as we're doing this here.
Chair McDonald, it doesn't look like there's anyone else that's called in
She's-
besides Barbara at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we made a couple of efforts at it. So, Councilmember Madrigal, it's your time to speak.
Thank you. I know going through the beginning process of this on the old Housing and Economic Development Committee, it was a learning experience every single time this came to committee. I think as in general, all three of us learned, however the three were at the given time, learned a little bit more about this entire process. I know we had different viewpoints, but me and Mayor Flynn, I believe, learned something new from each other every time this came up. But just looking at our completion of the fifth cycle, for the very low number of houses, it looks like we have an increase of 100%. So we built 184 very low income houses constructed and approved or under construction in this last cycle, but now we have to go 100 times that. We have to go to 1,840 units. So, it's 100%. And I know that ADUs are going to be very helpful in this entire process. But looking at the actual report, it's not really that we have to, build, or not even necessarily just the building part, but we have to find, if I'm not mistaken, we have to find, what is it, 10% more, just in case something falls through. So that way, you get a true number of about 1840. So we're looking at roughly close to 2,000 units somewhere in the city. And so I know that this is going to be, a humongous thing to get done in the next 8 to 9 years, or I'm sorry, 8 years. But just so everyone who may be watching is very well and aware of what income level lies with the very low. A family of 4 that makes up to $56,450 is considered very low. You are considered for low income housing if a family of 4 makes under $90,350. If you look at the median income in the city of Oxnard, that is a large number of families. I've gone to many community meetings, many neighborhood meetings, just in general. And, every time I go to these neighborhood meetings, first thing that comes up to is, people do mention crime, and that crime is created by the low income community. And every time I tell them what the income levels to be considered low income in our city, that's the vast majority of a lot of people in this city. It's very expensive to live here in Southern California, in our area. And the median income here is very high. I know that's something that Mayor Flynn was always big on, and we always got into argument, but it is a true aspect that a lot of us, even though, growing up, you may never have considered yourself to be low income, have been low income. So, that's a large number of our population. And looking at this, how are we going to get to 8,549 units? It's an increase of over 1,000 from the last cycle. And last cycle, we realistically only completed close to a third. I think we got 2,199 units done in this last cycle. I know that for whatever reason, we have to build more here in Southern California, and that's an obvious answer. But some of my issues, and I know that, these can't necessarily be answered by staff exactly at this moment, is, we've been doing our part. We probably have close to the same number of units that the next 3 biggest cities in our county have. And I'm not denying anyone the dignity or pleasure to live here in the city of Oxnard. That's not my intent by this comment. My intent is the fairness of this entire process. You have a city that has a third of the housing numbers that we have, who's throwing a tantrum all beyond this for the number of units that they have. So I know that this is going to be a difficult process to get completed. I know that there's a lot of work to be done, but my biggest issue is the density. We live in a very dense community, and I grew up living in a very dense community, and there is a lot of benefits from living in such a dense community, just the whole building of a community. But at the same time, if we've learned anything from the pandemic that we're currently in, is there are many drawbacks with living in a very dense community. And the least of my worries is parking. The real worries is, you see how easily COVID has spread in this city. Yes, some of the reasons might be irresponsibility by some of us, but another big reason is just simply the density of this community. This is a very, very dense city. And, I'm not against density, because I told you there is many, many benefits from living in a very dense community. But we saw the number one drawback. it's very hard to see how, this pandemic has affected so many people in the city. People that you probably will never have the opportunity to meet, even people who have gotten sick and are better now. So that's actually one of my biggest drawbacks and pushes against this. It's simply, that the density aspect of the city compared to any other city in this county is ridiculously high. And actually, lastly, I do have one question, and it's this the new program. Sounds great. I just kind of like, I don't know if we're at the beginning stages, so on and so forth, but actually would like a little bit more information than what the report gave us, because it seemed very broad. So I don't know if we're going to actively be looking for plots of land, or, if we're going to be reaching out and, or has this kind of been, kind of already started with particular areas that have large parking lots, so on and so forth. I just kind of don't want a blank, like, a blanket yes, and then it's something that, maybe one of the three of us, or even two out of the three of us, may not have agreed with once we find out a little bit more about this new plan to hopefully get more units built in the city.
Thank you, Ms.
Mayor-
Mallory. Do you have any response for that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Protem. Just to cover a few items. One item that Councilmember Madrigal asked. Yes, Councilmember, we are planning for the lower income unit number that you cited in the report, accommodating 2,911 lower income units over the next 8-year window. And we're building in a surplus of, or a buffer of 15%. So that's the number we've been using. And that was recommended by our housing consultant in the event that there's parcels that drop out. In terms of the program, it's the creation or potential creation of an institutional housing opportunity program. This really, the genesis of this was in collaboration with the housing director, Mr. Ramirez. In addition, it was as a result of looking at our inventory of our existing parcels when we were looking at possible housing sites for this sixth cycle. And we saw some parking fields that looked like potentially underutilized. We also looked at some schools, churches. We've had churches reach out to us to discuss the possibility of housing on their parcels.
You're now muted, Kathleen.
Yeah, I just saw that. Thank you. What makes up institutional is not just churches and religious institutions, but schools, hospitals, clubs, lodges. And we realized that there was some opportunity for some of those large parking fields where we could explore the possibility for housing. We have not gone through that process to start reaching out to those property owners. Having said that, I will tell you there are 2 parcels near the hospital which have identified within the housing element tomorrow that you'll see tomorrow. They'll be released tomorrow. That has the possibility for housing, but that was a different situation than going through a institutional housing analysis. Where we were wholesale writing a program that would then be applied to all sorts of institutionally designated parcels. So I just wanted to mention this came out of when we were looking at parcel fields utilizations. We thought this could be a great program. A number of other communities are exploring this. I recently received a correspondence from HCD where other communities were looking at this down south. So it's a real possibility. Doesn't mean that it would commit us to doing it. What we would be doing over the next few years is looking at these issues of parking fields, taking parking away. What would that do to the neighborhood? What standards should we be using for housing with church properties or hospitals or clubs or schools? We would be looking at neighborhood compatibility. We would be looking at density and the ability to integrate with the neighborhood and how we could be going through that evaluation to ensure that housing made sense in those locations and it didn't negatively impact the community or the immediate neighborhood. So it's really an opportunity to explore it as over the next 8 years. It's not currently in the draft housing element that will be released tomorrow. Having said that, we can add an addendum if the committee and council ultimately is supportive of the program. And we haven't, with the exception of the 2 parcels that I mentioned near the church, I'm sorry, near St. John's, we have not relied on the various institutionally designated parcels throughout the city to meet our housing obligation for the 6th cycle. If there's other questions, I'm happy to answer them. I just wanted to give that high level response.
Councilmember, did she give you a good response? Are you okay with that?
No, yes, I'm great. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathleen. I just a couple comments. One, I've heard similar comments that Councilmember Madrigal's heard is some people will equate low and moderate income housing to a crime problem, and that is not a theory that I agree with. I bought my house 14 or 15 years ago. I'm a block away from a low moderate income housing development. And I can't say that I've ever had any issues with anybody from that development. For the most part, we're talking about very good, hardworking, decent people that take pride in their job, pride in their community. They just have a lower paying job and they deserve good housing. And I'll segue that into my other comment is that in our search for property to develop housing stock on, we really need to make sure that we look at surrounding uses and compatibility. What I don't want to see us doing is finding a bare piece of dirt and say, oh, this would be great to build a development on, and then find out that it's next door to a factory that runs 24/7, because people that live in that or in any type of housing deserve to have quiet time at night, typically when people sleep, and not be disturbed by surrounding ambient noise. And there's been a couple of housing developments where we've put them next to places where we didn't realize the power turbine ran it between 2 and 4 in the morning and drove everybody half crazy. So in our search, I just hope we're diligent on that we create quality housing and housing that provides quality living style for people, including peace and quiet during the normal sleeping hours. So any other comments from the rest of the committee?
Mr. Chair, one
Yes.
question I have is Kathleen Mallory is if I'm looking at attachment A and the 5th cycle, the estimate was 7,301 units, and if I'm correct, we ended up with 2199. And there's a difference there. Now they're projecting or estimating 8549. My question is, if we don't meet that, are there any penalties there from SCAG and RENA not meeting the RENA numbers?
Thank you, Mayor, for that question. Going forward, there is likely to be a penalty if we do not meet our lower income housing obligation numbers.
Mm-hmm.
We do report to HCD, the State of California Housing and Community Development, yearly on how we're doing in meeting those lower income unit numbers. And I do envision that there will be more sticks. In the past, it's been carrot based. So for example, if you were doing well and meeting your affordable housing numbers, you would be eligible for additional grants and opportunities for different programs to enhance your community.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're hearing from discussions and conversations with the state is that it's likely that it'll be more stick based. And again, the focus has been on that lower income amount. Going forward also, I can't say what will be happening with other units, the mod and above mod. However, the governor has made a big point, which is we have a housing crisis, we have a housing problem, but the focus has really been lower income.
So that's how the ADU concept started, with trying to meet that lower income threshold, correct?
Well, I mean, we were seeing a lot of units, and we thought this is a great opportunity. So the ADU program is a fabulous way to help meet our lower income obligation. And we do yearly reporting with them, with the property owners, to ensure that they're lower income. And you'll see in the housing element that will go online tomorrow, we have a few different programs to continue promoting our accessory dwelling unit program. Then you'll see those as program documents to facilitate construction, to have basically template construction plans to help facilitate ADU construction.
And
as
one
well.
of the other housing that we need pretty desperately is farm worker housing too. The farm worker housing, right? Where does that come?
Yes, and our in terms of encouraging that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, sir. And the request here is to receive a report on the status and provide input regarding the proposed new housing program. And I think we've done both. So we will conclude that matter and move on to item E, items for future agendas. Any requests from committee members?
None for me, no.
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you all. Without having any further business, it would be appropriate to adjourn. So I will say that I appreciate all of your efforts, all your input, all the staff input. Thank you all for your time, effort, work, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.